Good afternoon. Hello and welcome. My name is Yasser Gulfraz and I'm your tutor for today's session, which is Law for Accounting. Today we will discuss our learning outcome 3, which is understand the impact of criminal law on businesses and professional organizations. So we will be discussing the impact of criminal law on businesses and professional organization. This knowledge is important for accountants, professional working in the field of finance. If anyone is there, please do let me know if you can't see my screen or if you can't hear my voice. So anybody is there? Okay. So indicative contents today, learning legal principles, legislations, case law, and ethical codes relating to business and professional organizational status of each, for example, law, regulations, and guidance. So by understanding the legal principle, legislation, case law, and ethical codes, we can ensure ethical practice and corporate governance within our organizations. So let's explore the key aspects together. Firstly, we need to be familiar with ethical codes that govern businesses and professional organizations. These codes can be issued by government bodies, professional bodies, or specific industries. Corporate governance and ethical practices are essential in any organizations. Then fraud on any organization, we need to understand what constitutes malpractice, fraud, and bribery, and their consequences within business and organizations. Then we will talk about bribery, fraud, and elements and consequences of fraud, elements of consequences of bribery, national and international regulations relating to money laundering. Any questions? If anything comes in your mind, please do let me know. Learning outcomes 3 assessment criteria. Obviously, understand the impact of criminal law on business and professional organization is important for accountants and finance professional. So assessment criteria here is analyze the relationship between legal principle, legislation, case law, and ethical codes. Then explain the elements and consequences of malpractice, fraud, and bribery in business organizations. Then 3.3 will explain offenses and penalties related to money laundering, and then finally explain offenses and penalties related to computer misuse and cyber crimes. So first thing is analyze the relationship between legal principle, legislation, case laws, and ethical codes. Ethical and ethics and ethical behavior, particular in the context of the accounts professional, we will discuss. Ethics in simple terms refers to a set of moral principles that guides our behavior and decision makings. These principles helps us that guide our behavior. These principles helps us differentiate between what is considered right and wrong in our actions. As accountant, it is important for us to possess strong moral values as we work in the public interests and have a duty to society as a whole. To ensure that we uphold these ethical values, organizations often establish ethical codes and codes of conduct for their employees. These codes serve as a guideline to help us navigate ethical dilemmas and ensure that our actions align with the profession's objectives. Speaking of objectives, let's take a closer look at what the accountancy profession aims to achieve. First and foremost, we strive to master the specific skills and techniques required for our work. Here he's talking about objectives under the heading of objectives, and accounting professional is talking about skills and techniques required for work. So this includes staying up to date with the latest developments in our field. Additionally, we place great emphasis on developing an ethical approach to our work, recognizing our duties to society. We work uh, we work diligently to provide services for the highest standards. By doing so, we aim to gain acceptance and trust from the public. In our pursuit of these objectives, we rely on a code of professional ethics, specifically designed for accountants. This code helps us navigate various ethical challenges and ensures that our actions align with our professional responsibilities. Many professional bodies, such as qualified accountants, have their own code of ethics that are similar in nature. Here is discussing some essential characteristics of a profession and how they apply to the accounting profession. Firstly, a profession characterized by a body of theory and ethical skills that are acquired through training and education. As accountant, we undergo an examination system to ensure that we possess the necessary knowledge to act responsibly within our profession. We also engage in accounting professional development to stay current in our field. Another defining characteristics is the adherence to a common code of value and conduct. We maintain an objective outlook and uphold ethical standards applicable to all members of our profession. By accepting a duty to society as a whole, we demonstrate that the profession can be trusted to act in the public interest. In return, we are granted a qualification and the right to use a professional title. So, some like a bodies for chartered accountant body is ACCA, ICAP, and also ICAW, and for technician level there are some other bodies such as ATHE, Institute of Accounting and Bookkeeping, and also for accountants IFA as well, Institute of Financial Accountants. So ethical and behavior here, same law and regulations, reputation and standing, maintain public confidence and protect public interests. So fundamental ethical principle. As an accountant has 5 fundamental ethical principles. So there are 5 fundamental ethical principles that guide accountants in their professional practice. The first is integrity, which encompasses being straightforward, honest, and fair in our dealing. So we must not compromise our integrity due to bias, conflicts of interest, or the undue influence of others. Second principle is objectivity, uncompromised by bias, conflict of interest, of the undue influence of others. The second principle is objectivity, which requires us to maintain a professional competence, act diligently, and exercise due care. Then is confidentially is the third principle, emphasizes our obligations to refrain from disclose confidential information and using it for personal and third-party advantage. Then last one is professional behavior. Professional behavior entails complying with relevant laws and regulations while avoiding actions that could bring our profession into disrepute. Here, a conceptual framework to help us navigate ethical challenges effectively, and accountants code of professional ethics provide a problem-solving procedure. So this procedure involves identifying any threats to fundamental ethical principle, evaluating the severity of those threats, and applying appropriate safeguard. If safeguards cannot be applied, we must discontinue the action or service in question. Threats to ethical principle can arise in various forms. For instance, there may be self-interest threats where personal gain or financial interests could compromise our objectivity. Self-review threats can arise when we have to evaluate our own work or judgments. However, to address these threats, we have safeguards in place. These safeguards can be created by the profession itself through legislation or regulation, or they can exist in the work environment, such as quality control measures. Principle versus rule. So if anybody can tell me what is difference between principle versus rule, if anyone is there. Okay, as future professionals, it is essential for us to understand the principle and approaches that guide ethical decisions making in the business. So one approach to ethical is the principle-based approach. So this approach encourages us to evaluate ethical dilemma on a case-by-case basis, considering the underlying principle involved. The advantages of the principle approach are numerous. Firstly, it allows for a flexible and adaptable decision-making process that can accommodate changing circumstances. By focusing on principle, we can develop our skills and judgment in navigating complex ethical situations. It also fosters a culture of ethical awareness where we actively take personal responsibility for our action. The principle-based approach also has its disadvantages. It may not always provide a clear-cut answer, and there can be more than one acceptable course of action. Conflicting interest might need to be carefully balanced, which can make decisions making challenging. Same time, on the other hand, we have the rules-based approach to ethics. This approach emphasizes the adherence to specific rules and guidelines in ethical decision making. Advantages of the rule-based approach include a clear-cut framework that make the correct course of action more obvious. It is often easier to enforce because there are established rules in place. Additionally, it helps us avoid tick box mentality, as it requires us to consider the bigger picture and the spirit of the rules. The rule-based approach also has its disadvantages. Loopholes can be found within rigid rules, and it may not cover every possible situation, requiring additional development of new requirements. It can also be too detailed, potentially missing the bigger picture. Any questions so far? Okay, compliance with the law. There are two categories of UK laws. First one is criminal law, affects the whole community, punishable by fines or imprisonment. And second is a civil law, relates to conflicts within the community. The concept of punishments does not apply So accountants are affected by laws which may not be obvious: health and safety legislations, employment protection, and equality laws. So as accountant, we must comply with laws and regulations, but it is important to note that legal compliance does not always equate to ethical behavior. Many activities may be legal but still unethical, while an accountant's ethical code is not legally enforceable. They are subject to penalties imposed by their professional bodies and may also be regulated based on the nature of their work. Accountancy profession. Speaking of professional bodies, the International Federation of Accountants is an international organization that represents major accountancy bodies worldwide. It develops high standards that all accountants must adhere to. In the UK and Ireland, the CCAB, or Consultative Committee of Accountancy Bodies, coordinates and unites the accountancy professions. Moving on to the importance of ethical conduct within an organization, a code of conduct is developed to influence the behavior of employees. It sets out the procedures to be followed in specific ethical situations, and violations can result in sanctions by the organizations, including termination of employments. A code of practice, on the other hand, is adopted by a profession or organization to regulate its members and supports legal duties. To create an effective ethical program within an organization, several steps need to be taken. Active leadership, starting from the top, is important. Leaders must demonstrate a commitment to ethical behavior. Employment buy-in is also essential, as everyone in the organization should understand and embrace the accepted standard of behavior. Suitable training is vital to equip employees with the necessary knowledge and skills to make ethical decisions in their roles. An effective ethical program brings several advantages. To improves the communications of expected standards of behavior, promotes consistency of conduct across the organizations, and help reduce risks and potential damage to the corporate reputations. Any questions so far? Okay. Sustainability and CSR, corporate social responsibility. As accountants, we have a responsibility to act in the public interest and consider wider social responsibilities beyond profit. Sustainability in about meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. It requires organizations to prioritize long-term benefits over short-term gains. Corporate social responsibilities encompasses the obligations that a business feels it has towards its local community, individuals and organizations connected to it, and society at large. As finance professionals, we need to consider the triple bottom line, which includes economic, social, and environmental aspects. This means supporting organizational profitability, labor rights, community development, and environmental sustainability. Governance, risk, and ethical. Any questions so far, if anyone is there? Okay. Governance, risk, and ethics in business organizations. These areas are critical for directors and managers, as they are are responsible for ensuring that companies are properly directed, controlled, and act in the best interest of their shareholders. When we talk about running companies properly, we inevitably enter the realm of ethics and corporate social responsibility. Ethical consideration play a significant role in decision making and the overall conduct of businesses. It involves taking into account the moral and social implications of our actions, as well as the impact they have on various stakeholders. In recent years, several high-profile corporate failures have shed lights on the importance of risk management. A key aspect of running a successful businesses lies in effectively controlling risks. To address this, organizations must establish an adequate system of internal controls, including internal audits to identify and mitigate potential risks. Any questions? Okay, so explain the elements and consequences of malpractices, fraud, and bribery in business organizations. Corruption encompasses any illegitimate use of authority and can involve a wide range of criminal activities. On the other hand, bribery specifically refers to the giving or acceptance of payment or other illegitimate advantages. Malpractices and negligences are related to any act or omission that falls short of their expected standard. To establish claims in negligence, we need to prove that a duty of care was owed, that this duty was breached, that the claimant suffered a loss as a direct result of breach, and that the loss was foreseeable. What is financial fraud? Anybody can tell me, if anyone is there, what is financial fraud? Okay, financial fraud is a serious concern within businesses organization. It can manifest in various forms, such as application fraud, where individuals provide false information or counterfeit documents while applying for financial products; identity theft, mortgage fraud, credit and debit credit fraud, fake charities, prizes and lottery fraud, and debt collections fraud are some examples of financial fraud. What is corruption? Corruption, on the other hand, involves bribery and other unethical behavior by individuals entrusted with the responsibilities in the public or private sectors. It violates their duties and aims to obtain undue advantages for themselves or others. Example of corruption include bribery, fraud, and extortion. Corruption and bribery. Again, if anyone is there, can you explain or any idea about corruption and bribery? Okay, any questions so far? Okay. Bribery as defined refers to offering, promising, giving, accepting, or accepting advantages and inducement for an action that is illegal, unethical, or breach of trust. Corruption is recognized as one of the greatest challenges in the world today, with the World Bank estimating it to be $1 trillion industry. Accountancy profession. When we talk about professionalism in accounting, it is not just about following rules and regulation. It is a state of mind that encompasses acting professionally in all aspects of our work. As member of accountancy profession, we have an obligation to comply with relevant laws, regulations, and ethical standards set by our professional body. By doing so, we avoid actions that could bring discredit to our profession. Next is accounting profession approaches. In recent years, the profession has taken a more proactive approach, aims to be aiming to be ahead of potential issues rather than merely reacting to them. So this means we need to take responsibility for any negative consequences that may arise from accounting practices and make necessary amendments to remove those consequences. So let me illustrate this with an example. In the past, accounting practices failed to identify the risk associated with special purpose entities, which were used by companies like Enron to conceal their debts. This failure eventually led to Enron downfall and the loss of pensions of many Enron employees. In response, the accounting profession reacted by requiring companies to include off-balance sheet financing in their main accounts, effectively addressing this issue. What is the public interest? Another important aspect of our profession is actively seeking out and contributing to the public interest. This means going beyond our immediate duties and considering the broader impact of our work on society. Let's consider an example relating to environmental audits. As accountants, we recognize that there is a lack of guidance on how to carry out environmental audits or accumulate appropriate metrics for these audits instead of waiting for society to request this guidance. We can provide in the public interest as a benefit to society as a whole. This proactive approach allows us to contribute positively to the well-being the community serve. Explain offenses and penalties related to money laundering. Money laundering is the process of disguising the proceeds of criminal activities to make them appear legitimate. It is a serious offense and is defined as such under the Proceeds of Crime Act 2002. Criminal property can include the proceed of tax evasion, benefits obtained through bribery and corruption, and even benefits from failing to comply with regulatory requirements. The act of money laundering involves various offenses under the law. These includes concealing, disguising, converting, transferring, or removing criminal property. Taking part in an arrangement to facilitate the acquisition, use, or control of criminal property is also considered an offense, as is acquiring, using, or processing criminal property. So here is a money laundering offense under principle POCA 2003, principal money laundering offenses, failing to report, suspecting money laundering, tipping off. So offenses: maximum money laundering, maximum 14 years, tipping off 5 years, failure to disclose knowledge or suspicion of money laundering, it's a 5 years. So fundamental behavior refers to international deception carried out of personal gain. It is considered a criminal activity and can lead to significant can lead to significant penalties, including imprisonment. There are various there are various type of fraudulent behavior connected to companies, such as insider dealing or insider trading, market abuse, money laundering, bribery, fraudulent and wrongful trading, and criminal activity in company management. One offense is the failure to file accounts or annual return. It is a criminal offense to not deliver these documents on time. If convicted, a director could face a criminal record and a fine up to £5,000 for each offense. Another offense is providing misleading information to an auditor. It is illegal for an offense of the company to provide false or deceptive information to the auditor or fail to provide the required information. If the individual can prove that it was not reasonably practicable to provide the information, they may defend against the charge. Next is business name. Using a business name that requires a prior approval without obtaining that approval is also a criminal offense. Additionally, failing to disclose the necessary business details, such as the corporate name and address for document service, is considered an offense. Under the Company Directors Disqualification Act 1986, acting in contravention of a disqualification order or managing a company while disqualified is a criminal offense. The penalties for such offenses can include imprisonment and fines. Phonics companies, anybody can tell me what the phonics companies are, if anyone is there? Okay. These are companies that emerged from the ashes of liquidated companies to prevent individuals involved in the previous company from starting a new one with a similar name or suggesting an association with the previous company. Specific provisions apply for 5 years following liquidation. Contravening these provision is a criminal offenses and can lead to imprisonment and fines. Moreover, the director will be personally liable for any debts incurred during their involvement in the management of the new company. Explain offenses and penalties related to computer misuse and cybercrime. The Computer Misuse Act, or CMA Act, CMA 1990, is an important piece of legislation in the UK that criminalize unauthorized access or modification of computer data without appropriate consent. The Act allows the prosecution of individuals who use or access computers for malicious purpose. Offenses under the CMA include unauthorized access to computer material, unauthorized access with intent to commit further offenses, and act intended to impair the operation of a computer system. Fraud Act 2006, a significant piece of legislation that has greatly transformed the criminal law regarding fraud. Before the enactment of the Act, the statutory fraud offenses under the Theft Act 1978 were primarily centered around deceptions. These offenses included obtaining property, money transfers, and service through deception. With the introduction of the Fraud Act, all of these old statutory deceptions offenses were replaced. Instead, a new offense of fraud was established, which requires certain elements to be proven First, the defendant must have acted dishonestly and intended to make a gain to or cause a loss to another person. Additionally, the defendant must have carried out one of the following acts: making a false or misleading representations, failing to disclose informations, abuse of positions, uh, etc. Maintaining professional independence. Any questions so far? If anyone is there, any question? Maintaining professional independence, it is crucial for accountants to maintain a professional distance from their clients. This entails maintaining objectivity and avoiding conflicts of interest and under influence from others. To do so, accountant must consider the following factors: strength of character and professionalism, uh, legal accountability and penalties, being aware of the legal obligations and potential consequences for non-compliance, then understand the professional standard and regulations governing the accounting profession and the potential disciplinary actions that may be taken for violations. Impact on professional reputations, recognizing that an unethical behavior or misconduct can have a negative impact on one's professional reputation. Impact of professional reputation, recognizing that any unethical behavior or misconduct can have a negative impact on one's professional reputations. What it comes to maintaining professional independence. So next one is moving forward, maintaining professional independence. Let's discuss the topic of gifts, hospitality, and inducement. These can be offered by colleagues, clients, contractors, suppliers, or other parties. However, they pose a significant threats to objectivity and confidentially. To address these threats, consider the following. First one is self-interest, and then is intimidation. So here both are here, self-interest and intimidation. So self-interest threat: if you feel that accepting a gift or hospitality could compromise your objectivity, inform senior management or those charged with governance. Intimidation threats: if you perceive a gift, hospitality, or inducement as a form of intimidation, inform third parties such as professional bodies, or advise close personal relations or associates about the potential threats and possible safeguards. Maintaining professional independence, Bribery Act 2010. This act addresses the offenses of bribery, which occurs when a person offers, gives, or promise a financial or other advantages to another individual in exchange for improperly performing relevant functions or activity. On the other hand, being bribed involves requesting, accepting, or agreeing to receive such an advantage in exchange for improperly performing of functions or activity. A financial or other advantages under the Bribery Act can include contracts, monetary gifts, or even offers of employment. The Act specifies several offenses, including bribing another person, being bribed, bribing foreign public officials, and the failure by a commercial organizations to prevent bribery. Acting with sufficient expertise. Here we'll start with the fundamental principle of professional competencies, due care. As accountant, it is our responsibility to only undertake work that we are adequately trained. We are professionally trained and experienced in. We must never mislead our employers about our level of expertise. If we encounter situations where we lack the necessary knowledge or experience, we should seek appropriate advice and assistance from experts in the relevant field. This helps us mitigate potential threats such as time pressure, insufficient or inaccurate information, and lack of resources. To ensure our competency, we should consider obtain additional training or advice whenever necessary. It is also important to manage our time effectively, effectively allowing us to perform our work diligently, consulting with knowledgeable individuals or independent expert as well as professional bodies can provide valuable guidance. Any questions so far? If anyone is there. Okay, next one is policies for handling client money. Client monies are funds or form of documents or title to money. Client monies refer to funds or documents that an accountant holds on behalf of a client. It is essential to note that client monies do not include fees for work done or fee paid in advance, nor do they involve the use and control of client's own bank account. So as an accountant, we must not take custody of our client's money or assets unless legally permitted to do so. Policies for handling client money. Handling client money can present self-interest threats to our professional behavior and objectivity. Therefore, we should adhere to specific policy guidelines, separation, use, or accountability. So first one is separation. Client monies should be kept separate from our personal funds or the funds of our practices. Secondly, use. Client monies should only be utilized for the intended purpose. And then third one is accountability. We must be prepared to account for the client monies to authorized inquiries at all times. Any question if anyone is there? Okay. Confidentially and disclosure. What is confidentially and disclosure, which is a fundamental? Confidentially and disclosure is a fundamental ethical principle in our profession. Confidentially means that certain information shared with us should be kept private and not disclosed without proper authorization. In terms of data protection and personal privacy, the Data Protection Act 1998 grants individuals the right to know what information is held about them. So as data controllers, we have a legal responsibility to comply with the principles of the Act. Failure to notify the Information Commissioner Office about the processing of personal information is a criminal offense. There are circumstances in which we can disclose confidential information. First, when we are properly authorized to do so. Second, when we have a professional duty or rights to disclose the information. And finally, when we have a legal obligation to disclose it. It is important to note that confidentiality extends beyond the completion of our assignments. We must ensure that any staff under our authority or individuals we seek advice or assistance from also maintain confidentially. Here are some references. So that's it for today. So any question if anyone is there? Okay, so if you have any question, please drop me an email at yasir@ukversity.co.uk. And that's it for now. And see you tomorrow for our next session at 2 o'clock. So have a good weekend, guys, and goodbye for now.